The lawyer set up a hotline where people can call in with accusations. Guess how many calls they got against this dude? 12,000. Now, obviously, some of those calls were crank calls. You get a guy calling and he's like, "Hey, man, P. Diddy finger blasting my butthole, man. I need help."
Welcome to the Unapologetic Man Podcast, the only podcast that's all about self-improvement, confidence, success, women, and being a man without making any apologies for it.
What is up, the champions? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the UMP. Happy Monday. I hope the weekend treated you well. And today we are going to talk about the diddler, P. Diddy, and everything that he did and what Hollywood is doing and how the ego, which is also inside you, brother, can get out of control. And we're going to talk about how to control that ego because it is absolutely not your amigo, as Diddy has found out, sitting in jail right now. And just imagine this guy, brothers. He used to travel everywhere by stork, a freaking big bird letting him down gently into every single party. He used to wipe his ass with baby rabbits, sit on fucking toilets of gold. Everything was given to this guy. And now look where he's at. He's in the shoe, the segregated housing unit where you're fucking inside for 23 hours and outside for 1. That's why it's called 23 in 1, the shoe. They're not going to put this guy in Gen Pop. If they put him in general population, you know what he's going to get? He's going to get fucking murked because somebody's going to want to kill the dude to get the street cred. They're going to make like a knife out of those toothbrushes, like just scraping it on the ground for 20 hours. And they're going to go up to Diddy and be like, "Hey, Diddy, you got a lot of heart, Cardinal." And then Diddy's going to be like, "Hey, you got to give it your best shot." And then they're going to start stabbing them. And when they stab people in prison, it's like hella fast. It's like, right? And they're all going to be stabbing him. They're going to throw him over the fucking balcony. He's going to crash into the commissary unit where there's some dude in there, 65 years old, 5 months away from getting parole. And he's going to kill that guy. Diddy's going to be laying on his back with his ball sack hanging out, blood coming out of the tip of his penis as retribution for all the shit that he allegedly did. Now, all jokes aside, gentlemen, I want to preface this by saying we don't have any court verdict here. We don't have any evidence, but I will say this. He's being prosecuted by the feds. And when the feds prosecute you, they have something like a 99.5% conviction rate. So they have an airtight case about this guy. People are coming out in droves saying all the shit that this guy did to him. It's a really fucked up situation, and it's all because of the ego, as I alluded to earlier. Apparently, there's 125 people who have come forward, 25 of which were underage when it happened to them. In addition to that, the lawyer set up a hotline where people can call in with accusations. Guess how many calls they got against this dude? 12,000. Now, obviously, some of those calls were crank calls. You get a guy calling and he's like, "Hey, man, P. Diddy finger blasting my butthole, man. I need help." Or you get a dude who's like, "Hey, man, Diddy was getting me backside and he didn't even do me the justice of giving me a Dutch rudder." And the lawyer's on the other side and he's like, "Sir, if Diddy was doing you doggy style and he didn't give you the justice of a Dutch rudder, how, if you were not enjoying that doggy style, were you able to generate a boner? Were you not enjoying the sodomy?" It's weird, dude. This entire situation is super fucked up. Apparently, 50% of the people who were molested by this guy were men. So obviously, P. Diddy liked to finger blast buttholes. He liked to finger blast vaginas. If it was a hole, he was finger blasting it. And guys, did you hear? He had 1,000 bottles of baby oil. I can tell you right now, he was a sadistic motherfucker if he was using baby oil for sex. Have you ever used baby oil during sex? Well, I have once, and my penis is still burning from it. So I don't know what he was thinking where that's concerned. And apparently he had 500 dildos. I mean, dildos to strap on your forehead, dildos to strap on your leg, to strap onto girls, to strap onto dogs. The dude was just all over the court with his freak offs, which apparently we're going to find out soon. Other Hollywood actors, other Hollywood elites like in hip hop and such are going to come out having been filmed doing this kind of stuff with P. Diddy. I'll tell you, boys, when you do crazy shit, It always has a way of catching up to you. The truth always reveals itself. And that's what the ego does. It just wants more and more and more. And it is impossible to satisfy the thing because it's a bottomless pit. One of my favorite quotes comes from Abraham Lincoln. He said, "The best way to judge a man's character is to give him power." When you're given power, your ego can just go crazy and do whatever the fuck it wants to do. This is what happened to P. Diddy, who obviously had some sadistic shit going on. We don't know what happened in his childhood. I heard one interviewee say, when you grow up on the streets, you're seeing a lot of fucked up stuff. And if you're given that kind of power to express your dysfunctions, well, who knows how far it's going to go. But we see time and again, people who don't have good character, people who haven't constructed the discipline within themselves will always go crazy whenever they get power, whenever they get money. Now, in the case of P. Diddy, he obviously had some sexual dysfunctions, but what happened is he started getting famous. What probably happened is he started experiencing some cool after parties where, let's say, in the beginning, he had a threesome or a foursome. Then, since he's bisexual, which is totally fine, he brought in some dudes. He was enjoying that. Then he was like, I don't really like the fact that I have to convince these people to try to have sex with me. So why don't I just drug them? So then maybe he started using some GHB, which is the date rape drug. And by the way, I've had many women, and get this, boys, many women tell me that they've been given GHB because it kind of makes you pass out. It kind of makes you sleep. And from my statistics, I'd say about 1 out of 3 chicks has either been molested, raped, or attempted to be raped during her lifetime. 1 out of 3 girls, that's been my research. And you can corroborate that with the internet search. It is a really common thing. And if you're the kind of guy that does that to chicks, please stop listening to my podcast. Click away right now because, brother, you have a fucking issue there. And obviously, boys, I believe that is not fucking cool to do. The one thing about me is I was a scumbag. I admit it most readily, but I never once even thought about taking advantage of a woman, giving her G, having sex with her when she's passed out in my bed when we've never had sex before, which has happened to me many times. I always kept my moral compass in place where it's concerned of taking advantage of women. Now, did I manipulate women and break their hearts? Yes, I did. I obviously don't do that anymore because I understood that the ego, which is not your amigo, is insatiable, meaning it can never be satisfied, like Diddy. So once you get a little piece of power, you start extending it more and more and more until, in his case, it got completely out of hand. Now the dude is literally in the shoe doing 23-1. And get this, gentlemen, they have tried to get him out 3 different times with a $50 million bond. And each of the judges said no. 3 different judges said no. Why is that? Because they have an airtight case against this guy. They obviously have people that are willing to come forward and testify against him. This, in my opinion, is the ego self-destructing, which has actually been predicted by a lot of spiritual masters. We're going to get to a place where the ego starts deflating on itself because it can't maintain all the evil that it does. Now, evil, of course, going back to my 600th episode, doesn't exist. It's just being out of balance. It's doing things that create suffering both for yourself and for others. And the ego will always and only create suffering both for yourself and for others. What is the ego? It's the part inside yourself that wants you to have a great reputation, that wants other people to admire you. It wants to get more, whether it's more money, more sex, more power, whatever it is, it just wants more. If you think to a lot of politicians out there, you can see that their ego is also ravenous, just wanting more money, more power. It's never satisfied. With P. Diddy, of course, it manifested in a dysfunctional way because he had the power to do it. I remember listening to a podcast once with Jordan Belfort. He's the guy that The Wolf of Wall Street was based on. And he said that they became so depraved in their parties that they would challenge each other to do the nastiest shit. And this is a story he told where a dude was having sex with the prostitute, came inside of her, and then another guy was bet that you can't drink the cum dripping out of her vagina. And he did just that. And everybody was laughing and partying. And they gave him like 10 grand or whatever it was. Because the more you're able to indulge in your desires, the more those simple indulgences don't satisfy you anymore. So you have sex with one girl. That wasn't really satisfying. Let me try two girls. Let me try two girls and a guy. Let's do a freak off where everybody's fucking. Let's drug everybody and have sex for 3 days straight while we're all slamming drugs and doing meth and see if that could get us high. Because just like a drug addict, you need more and more and more. Unless, of course, you temper that with discipline, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So in his case, it became more and more deprived because he probably couldn't maintain it in a quote unquote legal way. He started drugging people, and now the dude's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. So his ego got out of control. And here's the thing I want to tell you, brother. One of the reasons that your ego isn't getting out of control in a similar method. Now, I'm not saying that you would be that dysfunctional, but I am saying that you have the potential within you to do some psychotic, crazy, unbelievable shit, just as I have that potential within me. And this is a big thing that Jordan Peterson talks about. He says that you have a monster within you. And unless you're able to recognize that monster and admit that it's there, it will take control of you if given the opportunity. All of us are able to do some monstrous, fucked up shit. I talked about that guy that threatened to pull the fire alarms at my daughter's school, and when all the kids run out of the classroom, mow them down with a machine gun. Would I kill that guy if given the opportunity? If, of course, he did that crime? Yes, I would. And I admit that forthright. I always tell Marissa, the most chance I have of going to prison and being with P. Diddy in the shoe is if somebody either hurt Marissa or hurt Lucia. I probably would have the potential to kill them. And that's something you need to ask yourself too. How depraved would I get if I were in Kim Jong-un's situation? Kim Jong-un has the entire country under his thumb. What does he do? He indulges in women. Apparently he has some like harem of tens of thousands of women that he just fucks, and they all have to be virgins, by the way. He apparently just eats the best food, imports the best cars. All the dude does is indulge in enjoyment. And actually, I just saw a video of the guy the other night. He's looking pretty terrible, man. The guy looks like he's like 300 pounds, dude. He's looking pretty obese. He needs to get on that Stairmaster, but he lacks discipline. So what we have to understand is you have that ego inside of you. That ego has a voracious appetite, and it will not stop ever. It will keep going and going and going unless you have the consciousness to be able to control it and realize, hey, this motherfucker is voracious. It's selfish. It has no end in sight, and it's never satisfied. So I need to control it by first recognizing it, recognizing inside of you what it is that you're able to do. Do you think that if you were in Nazi Germany and you were a soldier in the SS who believed in the fatherland, who believed in Hitler, who believed that you were the superior race, and you were put at a concentration camp and told, hey, bro, flip this button when we tell you to flip the button? Do you think you have the potential to do that? If you were indoctrinated in a way that taught you the Jews are evil, they're taking over all our money, they're taking over the country, they're going to fuck us over, we are the superior race, so we have to kill all these people, do you think you could do that? I honestly think I could do it if I was indoctrinated in the right way. I think that I have that potential, and I think you do too. I think that we could all be like Genghis Khan and kill every motherfucker out there if our belief systems justify it. And that's what George Bernard Shaw said. He said, custom will reconcile people to any atrocity, which means if it's customary to think a certain way, then you will do almost anything, no matter what the atrocity is. And this is how genocides happen. And make no mistake, gentlemen, World War II is not the only genocide. There's been genocides in Africa, Southeast Asia, Russia. I mean, communism itself has killed millions and millions and millions of people to benefit the idea of communism. Let's turn the present into hell to justify a future heaven. Just like the 1,000 Russian boys that are dying right now in Ukraine. That's right. 1,000 men who are probably your exact age, who probably a lot of them could be your best friend, are dying right now because of Putin and his ego. So you have to understand, brother, that you have the potential to be a monster. And the only way to control that monster is to recognize that he's there and say, yeah, I could do that, but I choose not to. And if I see that monster starting to come out, I will temper him with discipline, with going into my masculine energy, with focusing on what matters, and yes, even focusing on love, because love is the opposite of ego. And do you think that Putin invading Ukraine and sacrificing 1,000 of his own men each day, as well as those Ukrainians being killed, comes out of love? Of course not. It comes out of fear. He fears NATO encroaching on his border. He fears what Russia might become if Ukraine is able to stand alone and maybe even join NATO. So out of fear, he's attacking Ukraine out of that ego to try to better Russia, better himself. And yeah, maybe in some way he believes it's the best thing he can do for his country. In fact, I guarantee you that's what he believes. But it comes out of a fear-based state, which is always the ego. Attack, war, any crime whatsoever always comes out of ego, always comes out of fear. You cannot tell me that Hamas was feeling love in their heart when they massacred all those people on October 8th or whatever the date was last year. That came out of fear. We need to kill these people because a present hell will justify a future paradise. How do we get over the ego? First of all, as I said, recognize it's there. Secondly, the energy that comes out of it, especially the energy of fear, hatred, negativity, anger, is a powerful energy. You could use that energy and channel it into a positive direction. Just like you, gentlemen, sometimes I get pissed off. Sometimes I get annoyed. Instead of insulting the person, attacking them, what I do is I put that shit in the fucking gym. I go into the gym and I lift weights and I think about all the shit that irritates me and I put it out in rep after rep after rep to build myself up positively, to let go of that negative energy. And yes, I truly believe if I was given that amount of power, I would try to act through love rather than through fear, because violence, no matter how well intentioned, always rebounds upon yourself. So Diddy had some fucked up sexual fantasies, yes, but underlying that was violence. He essentially hated humanity because deep inside, he hates himself. And anybody who puts negativity towards you, whether it's physical violence or even verbal violence, essentially saying that they hate themselves. What you attack in another, you actually hate in yourself. And you're symbolically attacking yourself by seemingly attacking the other. So now Diddy's in the shoe. If he gets put in Gen Pop, he's going to get stabbed a million times by freaking toothbrushes that have been sharpened on the ground. Imagine how bummed out this guy is. So what would my advice be to him? Meditate. That's the only option you have, is to go deep within. Start working on yourself. Start recognizing the monster within you. Accept that it's there. Make amends to move past it. Because even in the case of Diddy, whether or not he gets convicted, whether or not he truly is this evil individual that represents a bigger evil of Hollywood itself, he can still get past those issues by going deep within, and he can reconcile them just like you can too. What is a good story without a villain? The ego is necessary so that you and me can overcome it. And even Diddy, whether it's in this life or next lives, he's going to have to overcome that ego within himself that simply got out of control. Did you ever see the guy in previous interviews? Man, I've always disliked that guy. I've always said that guy is so full of himself. He's so arrogant. That's ego. Self-esteem is not having to prove it to anybody. It's just loving yourself and being completely genuine and completely within who you are. Ego relies on the opinion of others. It relies on taking other people out, beating other people, talking shit about other people, and yes, even taking advantage of other people, such as drugging them and making them have sex with baby oil where their penis is going to burn for 15 days after. He was some kind of sadistic motherfucker, but even that had a purpose. And one of the purposes is, God, that was hard to say, is unveiling the depravity that is happening in Hollywood. It just happened with Epstein. Now it's happening with Diddy. I bet you anything, a bunch of other people are going to be exposed for this. And the ego, as it exists in Hollywood, in this depraved way where women and men are being taken advantage of, is going to collapse. And that's the purpose of the ego, is to show us the error of our ways. And that, again, is what sin means in its original translation. It means to miss the mark, to be doing something stupid that's going to create hell, which means suffering both for yourself and for others. That's what Diddy did. His ego created hell both for himself and for others. Now it's going to collapse upon itself. It's going to reveal all the other people who have been doing the same thing. Their lives are going to collapse in a lot of ways. The ego is not your amigo. It will always lead to suffering, both for yourself and for others. That's how it works. So if you get power, don't be like the diddler. Don't be finger blasting buttholes and making people pass out because of GHB and having sex with people against their will. It's a fucked up way to be, and all it leads is to suffering. The ego is never satisfied, nor will yours ever be. So instead, channel the frustration, channel the disappointment into something positive. Recognize that you have a monster within you and take the monstrous energy and put it into something to better yourself, to better humanity, to make this world better. So unlike those egos that believe a present hell will create a future paradise, that's not the way it works. Paradise can be here and now. Heaven can be here and now if you simply recognize the ego and refuse to act through it. Because again, boys, the ego is not your amigo, as the diddler has found out. What do I believe is going to happen to him? He's on suicide watch right now, so he can't commit suicide. He might get murked by somebody who can get in there, just like they did to Epstein. They want him killed because obviously they don't want information coming out about all these other Hollywood and rap stars. But hopefully the government or the jail warden is smart enough to keep him under suicide watch. Don't let anybody get near him until he could go to court. I think it's going to be an O.J. Simpson-esque style court case where he's going to get the dream team put together. He's going to try to get off, but I really think he's going to be convicted, spend the rest of his life in jail, and hopefully other people who are doing the same thing also get convicted, because this shit needs to stop. It's time for the ego to implode upon itself, which is its entire purpose. Gentlemen, I hope you got something out of this, if nothing less than a few laughs. I did enjoy recording it. I love topics like this because it's the truth. It's the way this life works. And this is just yet another shining example of how things really are. So don't let the ego take you over. Keep control of it. Keep discipline. Focus on the higher purpose. Focus on love and ask yourself, what would love do now? What would a good person do now? And if you're religious, you could say, what would Jesus do now? What would Krishna do now? What would Muhammad do now? What would Buddha do in this situation? Because I guarantee you, if Buddha was leading Russia, he wouldn't be sending Iranian missiles into Kyiv in order to take it over. It's just fucking madness. But this is the ego exploding upon itself, and hopefully it completes the cycle soon, because there's just too much misery in the world right now. It's really a terrible thing. So gentlemen, please come back on Thursday. We're going to get back to talking about girls and how to attract them. I have an awesome one coming out then, and I will see you in the next episode.